Welcome to Life in LA, a look at people and places in Lower Arkansas, our LA. Lower Arkansas is made up of the 15 southernmost counties in the state. Join us each week as we talk to some of the people who make this part of the world such an interesting place to live. And now, let's join Life in LA with our host, Steve Ford.
We're back on Life in LA. Had a couple of weeks off, and it's time to get started with the podcast again. Today, there are national treasures, there are state treasures, and there are regional treasures. Today, it is my pleasure and privilege to interview one of the regional treasures of LA, Lower Arkansas, Ken Stonecipher. Ken, welcome to Life in LA.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, tell us a little about, tell us who Ken Stonecipher is.
Oh, well, Ken is a very eclectic person. I've always been known in circles as being odd, some circles talented, other circles no telling what they say. I was born and raised in Magnolia, and went through school. Matriculated, as you say.
Oh, you matriculated here.
I did matriculate.
I was going to use that word, and you beat me to it.
I beat you to it, yes. And when I graduated from SAU in 77, took me 5 years. I changed majors twice. I became known as the director for Encore, which was an organization that had been started previously at the school. It was made up of students who were from different areas, different departments on campus, but also had musical talent. And we put together a stage show when we went into high schools and performed popular music for the high school
Great
kids.
idea.
Yeah, and it was primarily established to be a recruiting tool, because then we would talk to seniors in the high school and tell them if they had any questions about biology or the English department or the physical education department, those students could talk to them about what life was like.
Wow,
at
super
SAU.
idea.
Yeah. And so I did that for about 3 years, and I was 27 years old, and I had lived in Magnolia all my life, and I wanted to get out. So I moved to Dallas, and having been a musician a lot of my life, I began playing in pianos and supper clubs. And I did that regionally within Dallas and Fort Worth for a year. And then I found out about a brand new piano bar that was opening in Monroe, Louisiana.
Well, a lot of folks go from Dallas to Monroe, I guess.
They may, I don't know. But so I auditioned for that club and was hired, and I began to play. And I was, this is not very humbling to say, but I was popular.
Wow.
And
well,
I was
of course.
good. I had a large repertoire, about 4,800 songs that I knew from memory, including lyrics. And I had a very good memory at that point in my life. And after 6 months, there was such a demand for me, that the owners put an addition onto the club to accommodate more people.
They added on to the club.
They added on.
You were bringing them in.
I was bringing them in, exactly. And then I was there for about 2 years, and then the clientele in the club sort of took a turn, and I wasn't really happy where that turn was going. And so I went to another piano bar, which was in downtown, what they called Old Town Monroe. And not as much traffic down there, pedestrian-wise. And so after about a year, I left. Wasn't making the money that I was making at the previous club, but I didn't want to go back to the old club.
Yeah.
So I came back to Magnolia. And I substitute taught for about 1.5 years, I guess, and then found out about another club that was opening in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is just about 30 minutes south of Nashville. And I went up there, auditioned, got the job, played for 1 year up there, and the whole time my parents kept saying, Ken, when are you going to stop throwing your life away? You're not doing anything important. you're just kind of playing around with this music stuff. You need a real job.
Mm-hmm.
And as fate would have it, the superintendent at Mena High School in Mena, Arkansas, called Pat Weaver, who was working at the college, and said, "We need a theater arts teacher. Can you tell me someone?"
That's right down your alley.
And she said, "Well, I'll tell you, I don't know where he is, but if you can find Ken Stonecipher, he's your man."
Mm.
He found me, and he called me and asked me to come for an interview. I was in Mena for 3 years. It was 3 years, three of some of the most wonderful years of my life.
Oh,
Absolutely.
That's great.
I made friends. I was not far from the ages of my students, and we became close. I became close with their parents. I played for weddings, countless weddings, and I still stay in touch with my students. Wonderful students. I then went to graduate school, got a master's in counseling, and left there and started looking for jobs, but needed a job pretty quickly, and was hired at SAU to be an assistant manager in their cafeteria.
Now that seems like an odd stretch from music and theater. You get a graduate degree and you're working in the
I know.
service.
I still wasn't pleasing my parents because I wasn't using my degree.
Were you living in their basement?
No, actually, my aunt had a small house that was behind my parents' house, and she had passed away, and so I moved into her house, so I wasn't under their roof anymore. But I'd always had a love of cooking. My mother had taught me things when I was growing up, and I loved to cook, and the whole aspect of that. And so I did well for that year, but I realized after that year, it was the May of '93, I needed to use my degree, and because I had been a musician and a musical person, I thought, why don't I move to Nashville, Tennessee? I've lived there once. I know I've lived in the area once, and so I moved to Nashville and got a job working for Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools, and did that until 2010. I taught for 17 years. The school system in Metro became very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, and I did not want to continue doing that. So I took early retirement and reinvented myself as a book editor and ghostwriter.
Ghostwriter? Isn't that creepy?
Well, the first project that I started was very creepy, absolutely.
Who needs an editor anyway?
Well, I'll tell you, it's someone who has a lot of thoughts in their head, and they can write a fairly good sentence, but it's not totally correct.
They're always dangling participles to deal with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, an author, my first author I worked with was from Plainview, Texas. From Plainview, Texas. And he contacted me. I had already been posting things on Facebook, short stories, essays. Things were funny, things were sad, poignant.
Oh, I remember those. You used to have posts all the time on Facebook.
and I garnered a large following.
One of the things about having a large following on Facebook, you can't really monetize that either.
No.
But people may like looking at my photographs or reading your short stories, but it doesn't convert into...
No, absolutely not. But in my case, it did, because this author from Texas contacted me, and he said, I'm writing a novel, and I need an editor. Is this something you can do? And I said, well, I taught English for years. I certainly
I think I can handle that, yeah.
And he said, I'm not for sure what an editor does. And I said, well, send me a chapter of your book. And he did, and I edited it, and I sent it back. And he said, well, it still sounds like it did. And I said, well, minus the bad subject-verb agreement and dangling modifiers.
Oh, you took his writing and cleaned it up, but it still sounded like him.
Right. And he said, but I want it to be exciting. I want it to be just wonderful.
Use more exclamation points.
Right.
That always worked.
And I said, well, what you're talking about is a ghostwriter. And he said, what is that? I said, give me a week. So I elaborated, added probably 6 or 7 pages to what he had already sent me. I sent it back. And he texted and said, "Oh, yeah, man, this is what I want." And I said, "Well, that's double the price."
Yeah, because you're doing all the work now.
That's right. So we started working together. That was March of 2016. Now, we worked for 4 years on a science fiction novel. And we took a hiatus about 1.5 years ago because he had some health problems. He had family members that had some health problems. And he said, "I've got to stop." He said, "We're going to come back to it, but I've got to stop right now." And that turned into 1.5 years. When we stopped, we were at 2,800 pages.
Oh my gosh, you're the ghostwriter of Dune.
Absolutely. And I kept saying to him, "Larry, this is no longer a novel. This is a trilogy." And then it became longer than a trilogy. And it's a very graphic science fiction novel with aliens eating humans, and he wanted it as graphic as possible. So it's going to be interesting where this goes.
Well, it hasn't been published yet.
When we pick it back up. Exactly.
Sounds like that Paul McCartney song, "Paperback Writer." I need a job, and I want to be a paperback writer.
Right. But then I picked up some other authors, and it's been a good living.
Where'd you get the idea for a cookbook?
Well, about, I would say, probably 15 years ago, I had an idea to publish a redneck cookbook because Jeff Foxworthy was big at that time, and everything was about redneck. So I published Bubba's Original Sophisticated Southern Redneck Cookbook.
Ooh.
It didn't sell much, but it was hilarious.
Are there still copies around?
No, there are not, thank goodness. And then later I published Bubba's Original Full-Fledged Redneck Cookbook.
Oh, full-fledged.
Full-fledged, because there was a chapter on potted meat, there was a chapter on Spam, there was a chapter on Vienna sausages, there was a chapter on moon pies and Mountain Dew recipes made with all of these ingredients. And it was even less successful than the first cookbook. But anyway, to this cookbook that I'm very proud of, and so far has been a huge success.
Still Magnolia's Matriarchs.
Right.
The title.
Right.
Well, what exactly is a matriarch anyway?
Well, a matriarch is a woman who is the head of something. And we all know, you know as well as I do, that our mothers from this small town of Magnolia were very strong, dominant women. They were married to husbands who were probably equally as strong, but we all looked up to our mothers. And there were a lot of mothers in this town that were great cooks. Some of them actually educated cooks, educated in the field of food. And I had the idea for this book about 10 years ago, and I sought some help with it. And my very good friend, Kathy Jean.
She's written some cookbooks.
She's had 3 very successful cookbooks, but she was busy. She's always busy. She's a workaholic. She didn't have time. And so I just kind of put this on the back burner for a while, and I thought, I still want to do this. So
look at the names in here: Elsie Adams, Glow Atkinson, Paula Boaz.
Right.
You could flip through here. Francine Colquitt, Catherine Connolly. Oh, you got Cleo Cooper in here.
Yes. Yes.
That was Pam and Carol's mom. Oh, there's so many names.
Right.
Who cares about the cookbook part? Just flip through and read about the matriarchs.
Well, as I've told people throughout this whole 10-month process, it's not really about the recipes, because how many recipes for cornbread do you need, or chicken spaghetti, or pound cake? It's about the first 93 pages in this book, which is
that's the ladies.
It's like a history book of Magnolia, and that's sort of the way I have promoted it. And sales have been excellent.
Oh.
More than I could have expected.
Well, that's great.
And everybody's been extremely
Yeah, you were at
complimentary.
let me get this right because I know that Amy Staten McNeil will be listening very carefully at this point when I say the South Arkansas Heritage Museum.
Right.
Had you there Saturday morning signing, autographing. I got my copy of the cookbook then.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I don't remember you.
I was the first or the second one
Were
in
you the
there.
first or second?
I was the first or second one in
Steve,
there.
I have seen so many faces over the last 2.5 weeks. I couldn't even tell you.
That's the Blossom Festival.
Yeah.
You have a great time. You see all those people, and then
Right.
you forget who all that you saw. But yeah, I was one of the first through the door, and that's probably why you didn't remember anyway, because I was so early, and I got it autographed. The forever Magnolia matriarch Karen Garrett Pierce, in sort of in memory of her.
Yes, I decided to dedicate that to Karen because we all loved Karen, and Karen loved food. She was always posting pictures of something she had made, or her husband Blake.
Oh,
And
really?
He was
He's
a
a
great
cook,
cook
too.
Excellent cook.
Yeah.
And when that tragedy took place, this book had already gone to print. And I called the company and I said, because, they had a deadline too. I said, I'm sorry.
We've got to do something.
You've got to stop
Yeah.
the presses. I said, this is something that has to go in the book. And when I explained it, they did. And they inserted her at the very beginning of the book.
Wow. She did ministry through food also. She
Yes.
was one of the first to be at
Yes.
somebody's house with
Absolutely.
dinner and
Absolutely.
all of that.
Yes.
It's a great loss for Magnolia.
Yeah.
Is it too late then if I didn't get my book Saturday? Is there any way that we can get a copy of the book?
Absolutely. I am actually headed home back to Tennessee tomorrow sometime. But there's an order form in the very back of the book. If anyone goes to my Facebook page, I will have information about how they can order, the price of the book, and I will ship it to them from Tennessee.
Okay.
And they can pay through a check or a money order or Venmo, and I'll have all that information listed as well.
Okay. Venmo. I'm still checks and cash.
Well, and that's fine. I think a lot of people are, and I had a PayPal account once, but I won't go into why I don't have one anymore.
That would be a good story for another interview,
one.
perhaps.
Right.
So, you're a ghostwriter, editor now. Do you ever dabble in music anymore?
I still dabble in music. Music has always played a huge part of my life. I was a very good musician at one point in my life. I'm not as good of a musician anymore, but I've always written music. In fact, I've written 2 musicals.
2 musicals?
2 musicals that one has been produced in Tennessee.
Wow.
And the other I'm still trying to get backing for. Some of the best writers in Nashville have sat in my living room and listened to it, and all said, "This is stupendous. We've got to find a backer for you." It just hasn't occurred yet.
Oh, maybe with time.
Maybe with time.
So have you written or performed anything lately?
Well, as a matter of fact, because I was basing out of Asbury Methodist Church for the last 2.5 weeks for people to pick up books, they asked me to sing in church this morning. And so Friday, I asked the preacher what he was going to preach about today. And he said, the Holy Spirit. And I said, well, let me write something. And so I did.
You said that on Friday?
I said that on Friday.
And had something ready on Sunday?
And I finished it yesterday afternoon. And so I sang it this morning.
I've never done this before on a podcast. Could we hear a little of it, Ken?
Sure.
I don't know what it'll sound like. These are portable microphones, but let's take a listen.
Okay. Mornings aren't the best for me. I lay there wondering what will be. Wondering what I'll probably do today that I regret. Chances come and chances go. A world of yes, but I say no. And just like all the times before, I fail the test. It's that old human condition that sometimes leaves us high and dry. It beats us down and takes away our will to even try. And then I hear that still small voice, reminds me that I have a choice, reminds me if I seek the truth, He'll be there. And if I stop and close my eyes, I see the cross, I hear the cries, I think about why He would die for anyone. When faced with that, why would I choose any action that would make me lose and penalize and jeopardize a relationship with someone who is my father, is my brother, is my savior, my friend, one who loves me like no other, one whose promises won't end. If I could just remember when I'm thrown into the fray, that no one loves me stronger, better, longer than the one who saves. Never when we're all in church, glued into our Sunday perch, sinful thoughts will seldom lurk inside our hearts. They always catch us by surprise, and always in a sweet disguise, and we ignore Him while we catch the prize. It has to hurt. When faced with that, why would we choose any action that would make us lose and penalize and jeopardize a relationship with someone who is our Father, is our brother, is our Savior, our friend, one who loves us like no other, one whose promises won't end. If we could just remember when we're thrown into the fray, no one loves us stronger, better, longer than the one who saves, than the one who saves.
Ken, I was not prepared for that. That's a beautiful piece.
Well, I hope that my writing is progressing and does not become mundane. I'm trying to keep up a little bit with the times, and but I know I packed a lot of information in those lyrics.
You did, and it touched me, and I'm sure it touches others. Tell us about your faith experience.
Interesting you should say that because it's connected with your home church of Central Baptist.
Really?
Yes, I was raised actually a Methodist. My grandfather was a Methodist minister, and me and my two brothers, of course, were raised Methodist. But if you'll remember, during the 70s, a wonderful man.
Morris Ratley, it has to be.
It's difficult for me to talk about. Produced some wonderful Christian musicals at Central Baptist. The latter of which, actually the last one he did was one that I was a part of, Celebrate Life. And it was a combination of that tied in with something that actually happened here at Asbury called a lay witness mission, where people from different churches came in and actually witnessed to us for a weekend. That's when I had my true conversion and understood and believed. Now then, this ties into baptism. It's a little story that I love to tell, so I'm going to tell you. I hope we've got time.
We've got all day.
As a Methodist, I was christened when I was 12 years old during confirmation.
Right.
First baptism. When I was a senior, many of us had come through the Jesus movement that was big
of the
at that
70s.
time in connection with Morris Ratley's musicals. So a bunch of us went to the lake and baptized each other.
Wow.
And I said, and for me, that was my baptism. Well, time passes. In college, I was friends with someone who said to me, he was a member of another particular faith in town, and I was told that I really needed to be immersed.
You weren't immersed in the lake?
No, I guess not. And this person said that we couldn't be friends anymore unless I was immersed. And so I allowed him to take me to this other particular church. And when we got there were all these people sitting out in the congregation. It was during the week, at night. But I allowed him to immerse me, and so that was
then you could be friends.
Then we could be friends, exactly. So that was my third baptism, my second immersion. My mother was a member of the Church of Christ. Now, she attended here at Asbury with my father and taught Sunday school and had circle meetings, but she never joined. And she convinced my father that he needed to be immersed. So we went over to Leland Calloway's church. I don't remember what church that was.
Oh, a fine man.
Calvary Baptist, I believe.
Or Trinity.
Maybe, I don't remember. And persuaded him to be immersed. Afterwards, Leland looked at me and said, "Ken, have you ever been immersed?" And I said, "Twice." And he wanted to know, and I told him, and he said, "But you weren't immersed by a minister." I said, "Okay." So, fourth baptism, third immersion. After graduate school, I joined Central Baptist.
Oh, you did?
Because Central Baptist always had a wonderful music program, and I wanted to be a part of it. And the minister at that time was Rich Kinsel. And Rich Kinsel, after talking to me, I had to talk to him, of course, before joining the church.
I can see where we're going.
And he said, "Have you been immersed?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, 3 times."
But you go ahead and finish.
And so I explained to him the whole scenario and got through, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, I hear that you were sprinkled in the Methodist Church and that you were immersed because your father got immersed, and then you were immersed for your friend, or your friend in high school and college." He said, "When were you immersed for the Lord?" And I said, "In the lake when I was 18 years old." And he said, "Well, you're going to have to be immersed here before you join Central Baptist." And I said, "That's fine." I said, I'm a pro at,
you know how to do it.
at being baptized. I said, "But I'm going to tell you what, when we both go down into the baptistry, I want you to look at the congregation and I want you to say, Ken has already been baptized for the Lord. He is now being baptized for Central Baptist Church."
Did he say?
He said, "I can't say that." And I said, what's the truth? I thought church was all about the truth.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I can't say that. And I said, well, let me tell you this. My good friend, Albie Rowe,
Mm-hmm.
when I told him about this, he said, take him under. And so I looked at him that day in the office and I said, then you're going to have to go under too. And he said, he kind of laughed and said, you wouldn't do that. And I said, you don't know me very well. And I let him believe until that moment that I was going to take him under.
Down.
Because when we went down into the baptistry, he got a real stance because he knew, because I was a strong man.
Yeah.
And he thought I was going to take him under. I didn't take him under. But I had my 4th immersion and my 5th baptism.
Oh, man. So do you think that when you die,
I'm
you'll
not
go to
through.
heaven? Oh, there's no...
I'm not through.
There cannot be more.
There can be more. When I joined my current church in Smyrna, Tennessee,
I'm holding my breath.
I went about 20 years not going to church.
Mm-hmm.
When I first moved to Tennessee, I was busy working and teaching and just kind of drifted away. I never really lost my belief, but I just sort of drifted and didn't go to church. And I found an absolutely wonderful Bible-believing church in Smyrna and went and talked with the pastor and joined actually during COVID when no one was going to church. It was all streamlined, but I was going. I was there every Sunday, and I got a personal message from him and the praise team, and I was the only one in the congregation.
We had a few that did that at our church during that time, not many.
Right, and because it's been such a wonderful experience at that church, and I had already told him about the baptisms, and he said, you don't have to be baptized again at my church. And then I went to him later, and I said, I think I'd like to be. I said, would there be anything wrong with me going under for a 4th time? Mm-hmm. And he said, absolutely not.
And you were baptized there. So what's the total then? Is
that's 4 immersions and 5
one christening?
One christening, yes.
Yeah. If anybody ought to be secure in their faith, it ought to be Ken Stonecipher.
Yeah, but it's not about baptism.
Yeah.
If you ask me, it's not about baptism.
That's true. That is true.
That thief didn't get it.
Oh, yeah. Paul the apostle said that wherever he went, he had one message for everyone. That was repentance towards God and faith in Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
And that's what saves you.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, I have enjoyed talking to you. I feel like we could go on and on and on. We'd have to do like episode 2 and episode 3.
It'd be fun.
But I've got a copy of your book here in front of me, still Magnolia's Matriarchs, and we will have a link to the order form so that if anybody hears this and wants to order a copy, you've got a few extra. You showed me a few back there.
Yeah, I do have a few left.
Right. Okay. It's a great book. I just flipped through and saw the ladies in there, and then the recipes too. Too. Well, Ken, I wish you all the best as you head back to Tennessee. Thank you for taking time to talk with me, and thank you especially for the song. I hope the microphones do it justice. It was a beautiful piece.
Thank you. And I appreciate you doing this. You're doing a great service for Columbia County and the surrounding area. And I appreciate you doing it. And folks, if you haven't seen any of his drone footage, you are missing out. He is absolutely a pro.
Oh, thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to Life in LA. Feel free to contact us at steveford@gmail.com if you have a suggestion for a future topic. And as always, tell others about this podcast and share it on your favorite social media. You've been listening to Life in LA, a production of Steve Ford Photography.